It is 6:31.
Recording in progress.
6:30, I'd like to bring the August 16th meeting of the Select Board to order. We're being recorded by 1623 Studios. And we have, it looks like currently 4 of the Select Board members in attendance. So roll call for attendance: Brian Solacey, Kathy Bellata here, John Round
Here.
and Becky Jakes. We're here. Thank you. First on tonight's agenda are public comments on non-agenda items. Are there any public comments? Okay. Please state your name and your address.
Standing here, are we coming up, or where are we? The purpose of public comment.
You
You're fine.
can, you
Okay.
don't need to.
Okay, that's fine. So my name is Sean Daly. I live at 20 Forest Street. Just give a little background. I'm currently the chair of the Park and Rec Committee. I'm also on the Community Preservation Committee as the Park and Rec representative. Grew up in town here. So I'd like to address the board about the feedback on last meeting from Brian Pike, the harbor master, about Sandola Cove in Long Beach, and what happened on that day. I attended the private event. This is the third time. This is the third time the event has taken place, and I've been at all 3 events, and there's never been any issues at these events. You know, just to give you a background, I think you know this, but
Excuse me. Whomever's on the iPhone, can you please mute yourself?
I can hear you.
Jim, we can hear you. Can you mute, please? There's someone else who's on an iPhone. I'll just mute you. There you go. Okay, sorry about
That's
that,
okay.
Sean. Go ahead.
okay, thank you. So, you know, as you know, the private, well, maybe you may not know, the private party reached out to Brian back in January to start this process, asked what needed to be done. They've done this before. They had, you know, as Brian stated, directed, go to the Coast Guard. They went to the Coast Guard, submitted for a permit. The Coast Guard said you'd need a permit. And even, you know, the day before the event, the day of the event, the person running the private party said, Brian, you have my cell phone. If anything happens, let me know. Brian's comment per him was, you know what you're doing out there. You've done this before, not a problem. In my opinion, that day was just a perfect storm, right? The weather was great. Low tide was at 2 o'clock. There were 2 events on the water that day. And, you know, I also think we're coming off 2 years of COVID. Everybody's ready to get out and have fun. And there was a little bit of a perfect storm right there as far as the number of people. And, you know, to me, I was at the private party. I can't speak about the boat max or group. But, you know, the age of the attendees at the private party were anywhere from 5 years old to 75 years old.
Bob Reed.
Yeah, the speeding, you know, a couple of things that Brian has mentioned about the speeding and slowing the boats, I agree, but that's the mouth of the harbor coming in. All of us coming in from the harbor, most people at private party came from the harbor, took a left, and we never went over 5 miles an hour. And we do that every day, all the weekends, all the time, we know that. So everyone, and it's probably because Brian, he's put the infrastructure in there, we're well aware of the rules in the harbor and everyone follows them. And lastly, coming in there too, you know, most people when they get close to where they're gonna anchor, and I've done this plenty of times, literally jump out of the boat and pull their boat with the anchor to get to the spot they wanna go. So everyone's very cautious coming in and very cautious leaving there. One of the things brought up was the swim buoys out there. I was one of the people that moved my boat past the swim buoys. I picked up the anchor, the motor was up, I pulled the boat with a couple of the boats into the swim buoy area there. I thought it was okay because we weren't under power, it was being safe. Obviously that was not. The other thing was, another reason I thought it was okay, was you have those swim buoys, which Brian spoke about. There are no boats allowed behind that swim buoy. Right behind the swim buoy, there are 2 private docks with motorboats. There is no way for those boats to get in and out of those areas without moving the boats, unless they're dragging over the land and going on the other side of Gales Point. They have to, under power or walk it out, they have to come through the same way we do. So I'd be curious to see, because Brian's pretty good about the rules, and I took a safe boating class. As far as I know, all the rules apply to everybody on the ocean. So that's one of the reasons there. When Brian came over to ask us to move, we quickly did that. I talked to him, walked up to his boat, talked to him. He did get booed, I was there, was the young person that booed him. It may not be right, but I equate it to the booing was the equivalent of, in my mind, if you've been at a Red Sox game and the beach ball goes on the field and the security guard grabs the beach ball, it was a friendly boo. It wasn't anything malicious as far as that was concerned. Another thing that was mentioned was phone calls at town hall. I'd like to know, obviously not right now, but I'd like to know how many calls? Was that really that much more than you normally get at the town hall? Pollution was another thing. There's no way to say the pollution was caused by the private or commercial event. I know in the private events, I know the people that attend there, we're all take in, take out. I mean, we don't want to be swimming in, we're walking around, we don't want to be swimming in trash. We're gonna take it in, we're gonna take it out. Trespassing, again, private event. I can't say it was those people. There were definitely people that walked on Long Beach and came out to the private event that I knew. They had permission from residents who were part of that beach committee, so, that private beach. So maybe some of the other people on that private beach didn't know them, but they had permission from other residents who are. Alcohol. No one was selling alcohol out there, okay? Everyone was BYOB, regarding the underage drinking. There were many parents, not saying it's appropriate, but in my mind, it also happens on July 3rd, the fireworks, it's the same on July 4th of the parade. I would equate it to that. Now, maybe it's something new for buying out there in the waters, but I would equate it the same way.
Excuse me, Mr. Daly, I'm really
Yep.
sorry, but are you almost done?
I'm almost done, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The boater from Gloucester, the comment the next day that he got pulled over, again, I equate that to, there were many more people that had a great day there. Bynes, in my mind, Bynes the police on the water. I'm not flagging down the police to say, hey, great job, thanks very much. There were more people, I mean, they said they were scared out there, or scarier than Gloucester. I don't know what the definition of scary is, but I guess it was scary enough that they had to come back the next day and anchor up again. So, my suggestions, real simple, have better communication with the Coast Guard on approved permits. There seemed to be a challenge there. Don't have two events the same day, I would agree. But I'd also say, don't overregulate and charge an exorbitant fee. It was one bad day, it was a perfect storm. The area's only potentially busy July and August. I was out there the next day, there weren't any boats really there, there weren't many boats there. I've been out a couple times since, it's not as crowded as you would think. I also strongly disagree with what the chair's statement at the end saying, I think this is way beyond the tipping point. I disagree, it was a bad day. Let's not be drastic here. There are bad days at Singing Beach and we continue to have the beach as is. I think it's a case of let cooler heads prevail, let's think about it. Yeah, I would agree, maybe not two events, but after that, I wouldn't make 100 different changes all at once. So, again, keep in mind, no one got hurt. I ask that you proceed solely, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments?
Just a brief one, Kevin Delaney, 10 Plum Hill. I think Sean addressed most of the concerns that a majority of the folks who were out there that day. I just want to make a couple other points, which is that these things that happen out there happen, again, generalization 3-4 times a year. I don't think we need to over-regulate that area. I happened to be out there last Saturday, yesterday, and 2 weeks prior, and there was almost no one out there on the weekend after, say, 3-4 o'clock. So I just ask that we actually look at the facts and we address the facts versus, some things that have been kind of brought up that Sean addressed that may not actually be true. I would also say too, that swim area that's there, it probably needs to be appropriate, meaning it should go to the low tide water line, which is where I think the people there actually own property. And I think we're pretty good when people are out there in general, there's a whole bunch of us that go there quite often. We respect that area, we respect the private piece of the area. We try to be very cleanly and handle things. Vine is very well respected there. Again, in this particular issue, it was just a bad day, if you will, right? And I'll just say too that, again, let's not overregulate it. And I think there does need to be better communication between the townspeople that are out there, Bion, potentially the Coast Guard. All the proper process was filed well in advance of the event by the family that had the private event. In fact, I'm pretty sure Bion knew about the event in January. The Marine Max event came well later and didn't necessarily need to occur on that specific date. So I would just say that we continue to look at the facts. don't overregulate, and open the lines of communication between the people and the harbor department.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Chairman's report, I just want to thank everyone who stopped by the Select Board Conversation Corner over the weekend and on Saturday. It was a good turnout and got some very good input, ideas. So thank you. That would have been not this past Saturday, the one before. And up next, we have drought condition report. And I did want to point out, Greg mentioned that a big thank you to residents. The water use is down about 20%, with Essex County Club down by about 60%. So, and they truck their water in and have a well anyway, but I just wanted to say, well done, everybody. Thank you. We're doing our best here, or pretty good anyway, pretty well. All right, so drought updates, Chuck Dam.
How you doing? I didn't really have anything beyond that. I will say, I talked to Ben today, and we have been seeing also some recovery in our well, both Lincoln Street and at Round Pond well, which supplements Gravelly Pond. He wasn't able to pull a level in Gravelly Pond today, so I don't have an update on that. But like you said, in general, we're down below 1 MGD, which is really good for summer, and we're actually considerably lower than that. So definitely good job to everybody that's heated the waterway.
Excellent. Thank you, Chuck. So actually, I guess those stats came from you, so thank you. And I noticed the state hasn't changed the drought conditions further. Anybody have any comments on that?
So just to note, we continue to be very dry. Not a lot of rain in the at least in the short-term forecast. So we expect this to continue certainly through August, and it's looking like it will continue into September.
Okay, one last comment. If you have a bird feeder, put some water out too. Those poor birds are just struggling. I keep seeing them gasping. But anyway, any comment from the public on that? Okay, next up we have committee reappointments, starting with Jack Burke for CPC. And that is for a 3-year term to end June of 2025. Jack, did you want to say anything? Other than you might.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I'm on a phone and on the Zoom, but my video is not working, and I have an bad internet connection. So I think if I talk to you by phone, you'll hear me. I appreciate you putting me up before the board for reappointment. I think I still have a little bit of work to do before I finally let somebody else take over. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if the board should choose to ask me.
Ryan, any questions?
No, I'm good, Jack.
Kathy Bellata? John?
No, Jack's been a good advocate for CPC.
Jack, I have no questions for you. You've given a lot.
Thank you.
And continue to do so.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a motion to reappoint Jack Burke to CPC for a 3-year term ending the end of June 2025.
So moved.
Second? Second. Okay. Moved by John Round, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call, John Round?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata? Yes. Ryan Solacey?
Yes.
And Becky Jake says yes. Jack, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And next up, we have Dan Lane for Harbor Advisory Committee. Dan, are you on the phone? Are you here? I mean, on the meeting. Okay,
I'm on the meeting.
we just have Ann join.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have Dan Lane?
Yeah, I don't think we asked him to attend that.
Oh, okay.
appointment.
I didn't see anything come through. Was it in the packet?
So this was just,
Just a
again, a reappointment, so we
Oh,
just
okay.
usually have
All right.
the usual. So if
Okay.
someone seeks reappointment, it's usually pretty straightforward.
Does anybody have questions regarding Dan Lane? Ryan?
No.
Kathy? John?
No.
Okay, motion to reappoint Dan Lane to the Harbor Advisory Committee for 3 years, ending the end of June 2025.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Brian Solacey, seconded by John Round. Ryan?
Yes.
Kathy? Yes. John?
Yes.
And Becky Jake says
Is
yes.
Ann on the phone?
And Harrison too.
Oh, Ann Harrison, whoopsie. And Ann Harrison? Ann? She's not muted.
In and out.
That's probably it. Ann? Okay. Oh, I think I hear her. Ann? All right. We'll move ahead. Okay, committee interviews. We have Jim Brown for the Downtown Improvement Committee. Jim, would you like to speak?
Sure. First of all, thank you for entertaining this or considering me for this. I grew up in Manchester. For the sake of disclosure, I currently live in Essex. However, I do own a residential home in Trough, our family home on Tappan Street, 16 Tappan, and then my family owns quite a bit of property in the center of town and the outskirts, and also another property on Tappan Street. I'm very active in local politics. I try to keep on top of things, and I've also been attending these meetings and assisting the committee over the last few weeks, last few months. So I would like to continue supporting the town and helping the town out in any way that I can. Most recently, I was a member of the 375th Committee. I also, in the past, sat on the Zoning Board of Appeals for maybe 4 or 5 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve Carhart, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say that we have been trying on behalf of town to be a bridge between town hall and the business community in town. And we've been seeking somebody who with deep ties to the business community and have asked a number and they were unable to do it because they were so busy with their businesses. And I met Jim about 6 months ago at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and we struck up a conversation, and he took a keen interest in our work and has been a regular attendee as a member of the public for several months now, and always had something constructive and helpful to say. And some folks on our group have known him for quite some time, and I think I speak for our whole group that say he would be a very welcome addition to our committee.
Thank you very much, Steve. That's an interesting point you make in terms of having representation from some of the business owners, and as you stated, they've been hard pressed to have time to be able to do that. So because typically we request that people live in town, but that's something for us to consider, definitely. Any comments from John Round? Any questions?
Yeah, no, Jim, your background I think is great for this, and as Steve had mentioned, I think it's a great fit for this particular committee. And I look forward to your joining it because of your perspective, and I'm sure you've got some opinions. In particular, is there any one thing that sticks out that you'd like to see the DIP accomplish in the near term?
I think one of the things that they're working on is communication, and I think they're doing a good job. In terms of big projects, of course, they've been looking at the parking, and they're working on that. And then also, I think, getting restrooms in this town is gonna be an important thing. I know it's not on the back burner, but it is a year or two out, because it's not a cheap, thing to do. It's not an inexpensive thing to do. But they have their fingers on the pulse of what goes on in the center of town, and it's very important that they have the communication between the retailers and the other businesses, the restaurants. And I actually got involved because I do sit on the board of the Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce, and I'm on their Government Affairs Committee. I also sit on the board of the Association of Realtors, the North Shore Association of Realtors. And so I have there's a lot of synergy with the stuff that I'm working on and have knowledge of, and what the board is doing as well.
Great to hear the DIP committee is on the right track from your perspective. Great, thank you.
Brian?
No, I think that Jim brings a lot of history to the town, a lot of perspective, and I applaud him and I thank him for stepping up to do the job.
Kathy?
Yeah, same. I think Jim would be a welcome voice on the committee. That perspective he brings is invaluable and a great connection to the whole business community, so I fully support.
One other topic that was brought up in a conversation is that the conflict of interest, Jim, in that just being a business owner and also working with the downtown improvement group. Have you had an opportunity at any time to go over the state's conflict of interest? And if not?
Not recently.
Okay.
The formal legal conflict of interest. I think when I did I think I had to sign for the 375th, read it and sign it. I'm sure I did when I was on the zoning board of appeals, but probably not an issue. I mean, in the past, I worked for large corporations, maybe 20, 25 years. I've held secret clearances because of some government work that I've done in the past. I don't think that, and if you talk to, again, Steve or anybody else on the board, I'm quite able to put aside my personal interests in with the sake or goal of doing what's best for the town and helping the town out. I just think this board I view this committee, this committee as one of the most important committees right now. They're very active, they do a lot of great stuff, and I think it's really important to keep this, in order to keep this town vibrant and to keep this town a nice community.
I would just say that if you take that criteria, any business owner would have the same conflict, so I don't see a problem with that.
Absolutely,
I don't see
absolutely.
a problem here at all.
No, I'm not suggesting it's a problem, just wanting to make sure that it gets looked into, but thank you. Personally, I think you'd be a very wonderful and welcome addition, Jim.
Thank you.
Ann Harrison, do you want to say anything? Do we have you?
She wants to, she can.
Okay, that said, let's see. Are there any other questions, comments? Occasionally we wait for the next meeting to approve. I don't think we need to do that. Okay, may I have a motion, please, to approve Jim Brown to the Downtown Improvement Committee for a one-year term ending at the end of June of 2023.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Moved by John Round, seconded by Kathy Bellata. John Round?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. Ann Harrison? And
Yes.
there she is. Yay!
Got her.
Okay,
She'll be
it's
in and out.
unanimous.
She'll be in and out.
Yay. Jim, Steve, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to working for the town.
Thank you very much. Truly appreciate it. Next up, we have Beth Heisse for the CPC Community Preservation Committee for a 3-year term to end the end of June of 2025. Thank you, Beth. How are you?
Good.
Okay.
When John Kenny was the representative from the Housing Authority to the CPC, and when he, his term was up, we needed to fill that slot, and I actually really am kind of interested in the CPC, and I like all the projects that have been done under that purview, so I thought, well, I'll step up and take a look at it. And I also noticed that the last couple of years, a couple of projects have been from the Housing Authority have not been funded. And I did some research, and I want to work with Irene to get something that can be funded, to find what needs to be done at the Housing Authority that can be part of the CPC funds.
Okay. Any, Brian?
No, I think, the glowing recommendation here, Mr. Fetishfield.
I think there's no shortage of those throughout town.
No, I've got no questions at all.
Kathy?
I have no questions either.
John?
That's great. Fine.
Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Do you have any questions for Beth Heisse?
No, I have no questions for Beth Heisse. I think that she will be a wonderful addition to that committee.
Okay, may I have a motion then to appoint Beth Heisse Community Preservation Committee, 3-year term, ending the end of June of 2025.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, moved by John Round, seconded by Brian Solacey. Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Thank you. Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
John Round?
Yes.
And Becky Jake says yes. You're stuck.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the request for installation of a little free library at Singing Beach. We are 2 minutes ahead, so we will have to wait. Let's see, one more minute. Does anybody have any problems with the consent agenda? Minutes December 2nd of 21, June 16, 22, July 18, 22, and August 1, 22. All right, if there,
One comment.
Yep.
Some of us cannot vote on
That's
December
correct.
2nd.
Yep,
So that has
December
to be pulled
2nd.
out.
And there were 2 people at the meeting that we went to.
Yeah, I can't vote on the 16th.
So the only people, okay. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 18 and August 1?
I'll make a motion to approve both of those as written.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
John Round?
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes, so that was moved by Brian Solacey.
I thought it was John.
No, it was me.
John
and
Round
It was
moved
I.
it. You got that. Okay, I'm just gonna stop there. And now it's 7 o'clock. So we can go back to the free little library, and we have the representative
Hi,
from the library. Where'd you go?
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are.
Hi, I'm Miley Black. I'm the teen librarian at the library, and we have a gorgeous little free library that we'd like to put up at Singing Beach. So we're just getting permission. We've got permission from Parks and Rec and an okay from Conservation Committee. As you know, I think you have all the paperwork there in front of you. And I can answer any questions. And I thank you very much for your time here tonight.
Thank you, Miley. It's a great idea. I really enjoy seeing those around. I do have one question for you, and that is regarding who will be maintaining it and where the funds for that would be coming from.
Good. So we have a couple of volunteers who show up faithfully every week to fill our little free library at Masconomo Park, and they have agreed to take on the Singing Beach Library too, if we need them to. I also have an eager batch of teenagers who would love to be involved. So
they happily paint?
They happily painted already, and it continues to get painted. We can't seem to leave it alone. It's a gorgeous work of art. You will love it.
That's such a great idea. I love it. As someone who used to co-own an independent bookstore, the more books out there, the better.
All right.
Okay then, do we have any more questions from anybody regarding our little free library?
Just one question. So how many of these do we have in town, Miley?
I think we have one
Just
so
the-
far.
Just one at Masconomo? Okay.
Yes.
I've seen them around at other towns as well. So,
Yeah, they're sprouting up all over the place.
Yep.
I think there's some that are privately owned as
I was gonna
well.
say, there might be some that aren't town sponsored.
Right.
Okay.
Some-
It doesn't register, I just know I
Yeah.
see
Is
it.
it,
Yeah, up on Summer Street in front of some, private residences. that's in front.
Yeah, there's a couple of three that I know of around town.
Mhm.
Ann Harrison, any questions?
No,
Okay, then, in that case, I did speak with, Steve at Concom, and
nothing.
seems like T's
I gave
been
up.
crossed and I's been dotted. May I have a motion to approve the
I just got one
request?
more question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. So the preferred location is what,
Number
there
one.
were three options, right?
Right, so the
Mhm.
preferred is that number
Okay.
one, which is closest to the path onto the beach.
Makes sense, okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right, motion to approve the request for installation of a little free library at Singing Beach according to the pictures with the location which we received.
So moved, option number one.
Option number one, thank you.
Second.
Second, okay, moved by John Round, seconded by Brian Solacey. Ann Harrison?
Yes,
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata? Yes. John Round?
Yes.
And Becky Jake says yes. Thank you, Miley, very much. I look forward to seeing it out there.
Thank you for being such a wonderful group to work with and for your time.
Thank you. All right, so next on the docket, let's see, we have to wait 1 minute. Okay, so it's Kathy, Ann, and I for the June 16th meeting at the rec center. May I have a motion to approve?
So
move
moved.
to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call, Ann Harrison,
Yes,
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
and Becky Jake says yes. Okay, the next one we have is December 2nd, 2022. So you two cannot vote on that one, but John, Ann, and I may. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of December 2nd, 2021?
So moved.
yes. Second,
Okay, moved by John Round, seconded by Ann Harrison. Ann Harrison?
yes.
John Round?
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. Okay, there we go, 7:05. All right, on to the adoption of financial management policy. That. Okay, Greg, you want to tee this one up for us?
Sure, so we've been operating under these policies informally, and the desire was to make them more formal. Actually, the auditors and the bond market likes to see formal policies, putting onto paper what the practices that we follow when we do our budgeting and managing finances of the town. So these 5 pages of policies, as I say, memorialize the practices that have been in place for the last few years. For example, a target of 10% of our operating fund is what our reserve amount should be. If it's lower than that, we should work hard to add money into it. If it's higher than that, we should think about how much taxation we're collecting, or we'll use it for some one-time expenses, so that it's not too large of a reserve. It talks about the processes that we follow in terms of accounting principles, following various governmental standards, accounting standards that are promulgated by the industry, CPAs, and the federal government as well. Performing an annual audit, which we always do as part of the policy. It talks about sort of the guidelines for what are capital projects, defining them, and when it will be appropriate to incur debt if necessary. Though it also talks about having, as a stated policy, that we try to pay for our capital on an ongoing cash basis when we can. So again, these policies should be pretty familiar to folks. The Finance Committee did review them and have approved the policies. So they recommend that you would adopt them formally as a set of policies. So if you're comfortable doing so, tonight would be the night when you would conduct your first reading, and then at the next meeting, if you're ready, it would be a second reading and adoption.
I do have one question, but I'll go. Brian, do you have any questions?
Not at this time, no.
Kathy?
I do.
Yes.
So thank you for providing that background, Greg. That was one of my questions. What the genesis of this was. Do we have other financial management policies, like
We have an investment
just the
policy.
investment, but no financial management policies?
No formal written ones
Okay.
beyond.
So that explains the need, so that's good.
Yeah.
I have 2 comments then. One is, I like the content, because you're right, we're trying to memorialize what we're doing. It feels like there's a mix of policy statements and guiding principles. So some of the statements in here are, use the word shall, okay? That's a policy, an enforceable policy statement. Other phrases are more guiding principles that cannot necessarily be enforced. For example, mention around what, I think it was number 9 here, number 10 here on page 3. The town will avoid budgetary procedures that balance current expenditures. You know, the town meeting decides how we spend money. So my concern over mixing in the guiding principles with the policy statements is the town meeting could vote to do something that's against our policy in theory. Or maybe I'm mistaken about that, but I just think it's good practice to separate out the guiding principles. And you can do it in each section. I'm not saying you have to have a big section up front on guiding principles. It makes sense to kind of interweave it, but policies should have enforcement behind them as well in some way. And I like all of the shall statements because it's very clear, what you're trying to do. And then the last comment I have was around that same section, the top of page 3. There are some really good guiding principles in there around, in number 8, like looking at service models to be examined annually, et cetera. I'd like us to consider being a little bit more specific. For example, benchmarking, zero baseline reviews, something, looking for outdated services so that we can free up funding for other things, just some best practices that I'm pretty sure Andrea is already doing, but may not be very visible to us or to the town. And I think it would be good to include those in our guiding principles, so. Other than that, the content I thought was very, very good.
Thank you, Kathy. John?
Yeah, so I guess just one question here. I was surprised to hear, so nothing in writing existed before this. It was really just GAAP, and we followed that.
So we've had some of these policies that we've had in writing but not formally adopted.
Oh, okay, all right, so it exists
So-
somewhere.
So they were never brought forward to the level of a formal policy.
Okay, so we're doing that now.
Yeah.
Is there anything in this document that has been added that was not a practice before? Or is there anything that has changed, or is this really pretty much from one tenant to the other, pretty much everything we follow? I mean, I can't look at this and compare this with anything.
Right.
So
Is there anything new in here?
yeah,
Nothing's jumping to my mind. I could certainly double check with Andrea on that.
okay. I would just like to know if we're adopting something that we haven't in practice done before.
Right.
I think Ann had a comment.
Yeah, I'm gonna go, thank you, John.
And Ann, yes, she would have been
Ann,
on this committee.
who's been on the FinCom.
All of these policies are very familiar to me. The way we take on debt, the reasons for taking on debt. I had a slight question about what it means to say property values should be reappraised or recertified every year. I thought they were reappraised every third year, but maybe the recertified covers it.
So every year they get certified by our valuations get certified by the state. And actually it's they pushed it out, I think it's is it 4 or 5 years now that you get a formal reappraisal a year. But annually, we're required to keep values within 10% plus or minus of fair market value. So that's state law. So yeah, every year you're supposed to be adjusting.
I guess I'd like to have it say specifically what our sequence for reappraising.
Sure, yep, no, we can do that.
Anything else, Ann?
General curiosity, do you know what the actual collection rate is?
The collection rate, is that what?
Yeah.
Did I see 96?
We're in the high 90s. I can't quote you the exact percentage.
I want to say 96 or 92. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's over 95%. Like,
Yeah.
I can have Jennifer tell us that number.
That'd be great. The rest of it seems fine to me.
Okay, just trying to find that number. I was wondering, have both Andrea and Jennifer looked over these?
So Andrea basically, she was the author
Okay.
of this,
And
based on what we've been doing over the last few years, based on some recommendations from the auditors, and looking at some best practice that the state DOR puts out. So,
And is this something that needs to go or has been to town council?
we certainly can. I'll have to check with her if she's reviewed it with them or not.
Okay, I kind of think that
Yeah.
that would be
That
a
would,
good idea.
like I said, my main concern is documenting something as a policy, which we might have no control over at a town meeting. So those would be the statements in particular I would suggest pulling out as guiding principles, type of thing.
And then I was just curious, but what is, it's on page 3, and page 4, number 3. What is tax exempt paper, commercial paper. What's that mean? It says short-term debt, including tax exempt commercial paper, shall be used when authorized for interim financing of capital, what is that?
So some of the bonds would be tax exempt because of the municipal bonds.
Commercial paper, is that what they mean?
That'd be an example.
Could I get some more
Sure.
specific clarification on that, I think? So I think what we need is a little. more-
Becky,
Yes,
if
Ann.
I may?
Yeah.
When we were building the two schools, we didn't know exactly how much it was going to cost, it was particularly true with the high school, but so we didn't bond initially and waited until the project was substantially complete. And I think that is the sort of thing that is described as tax exempt commercial paper, which is a short-term indebtedness to end. And when we were doing it, it was very, very low interest rates.
Right, so it'd be a bond anticipation note.
Okay, so this
Yes.
is actually a term used that people who are doing this kind of work understand. Is that what we're?
Yes, but I can be more layman terms if that's helpful.
If I may, Anne is kind of our leader on the policy rewrites to make sure they are crisp and
Yep.
have the right definitions, and I would just make sure that whatever this winds up being, adheres to those good practices that she and now John are working on.
Does that sound good to you, Anne? If you think it's good?
Yeah. I will certainly go over it when I get back, and perhaps Kathy and I should talk about separating out what is policy and what is practice.
The shalls and the shoulds.
Yeah, if it should, that's a red flag right there. Yes,
Okay.
happy to, Anne, participate in any way.
So we will pick this up at the next meeting.
Fine.
Okay.
But move to approve for an initial reading.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Move for the initial meeting approval. Ann Harrison, seconded Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
John Round,
Yes.
and Becky Jakes says yes. Okay, 17 minutes late. Traffic calming strategies discussion. We have Todd and Chuck with us. So, Chief Fitzgerald, would you mind giving us sort of an update on how things seem to be in town these days? You muted, sorry. I probably didn't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you. Well, thanks for having me on. So we continue on the police side of things to deploy our passive traffic counters around town as they are requested. We've only had a couple of requests so far in the last few months. It's currently out on Harbor Street now. Sergeant Newton, who's responsible for our speed trailers, has moved them around town as residents request them or areas where he sees fit. I think one currently on Lincoln Street, since the returning of school, we decided to put it down there, and then over the next few weeks, we'll have a concentrated effort on traffic enforcement on Lincoln Street and some surrounding streets. The first 7 months of this year, we definitely increased our traffic enforcement. Compared to other years, we've had 561 motor vehicle stops with over 350 written violations. And out of those motor vehicle stops, we've ended up having 46 arrests, which is up from last year. Last year, we only had 34 for the entire year. And this is just as a result of increased enforcement and officers out stopping more vehicles. Officers continue to conduct stationary radar enforcement all around town. They've logged 627 different events since the first of the year. And we continue to take notice of the complaints and address them, accordingly. And as far as the town's new traffic policy that Chuck put out about a few months ago, we've only had one request, and that was from or one formal request, and that was from Harbor Street. So that's where the equipment is now, and then we'll deal with it from there once we get the results. So that's kind of where we are on the police side of things.
And how, would you say that with the increase in vehicle stops and citations, do you find that that is slowing things down? In other words, is it having any measurable impact?
I mean, I think it is, but unfortunately, for sound like a broken record, with 2 officers on patrol at a given time, it's going to be difficult to get everybody. And that 1% on Pine Street when we're down on Raymond Street is difficult to find all the time. But I feel though it has significantly reduced traffic in certain areas. Again, we're still going to hear the complaints, but we'll address them as we see fit.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from the board
I have a comment.
or
actually.
comments?
Yeah, I actually happened to run into Chief Fitzgerald in the parking lot this afternoon. I see the police officers out there doing the very best they can.
Mm-hmm.
I would like us to consider thinking about technology to augment their work. There is technology that other people in other towns and maybe even other states may use to catch speeders. I know, I used to drive through a suburb where if you ran, they actually had a problem with people running red lights. So you run through the red light, they take a picture of your license plate and they send you a ticket. No human intervention involved. So the technology does exist, probably. Maybe no one around here is using it, but good ideas can come from anywhere, and maybe that's an option for us to look at, or have our new IT community based in Danvers look at, because we're probably not the only people with this issue.
So just a comment to that. After we talked about it, I remembered something that in regards to the speed cameras and red light enforcement. Okay. So if my memory serves me correct, speed cameras and red light cameras are not used in Massachusetts because there's no law that governs the use of that equipment. However, there is, I want to say it's around 2010 or 2011, sometime when the automatic plate readers were put into place on the tolls, and that was, I believe, put in by Governor Patrick to increase revenue. But it's definitely something that would help with manpower, and if we could put those in place, then I'm all for looking into the technology. But I don't believe they are allowed in Massachusetts at this point. And as a matter of fact, I think Maine around the 2008 timeframe made those illegal to use, and I think they're one of 14 or 15 states in the country that do not allow those.
So I think it would be a good question to ask, and if there's something that is not allowed, then, and if it's something that we think would be helpful, then the next step would be, how do we get it to be allowed? If it would be something that would be helpful.
I just Googled it and it does say.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Chief.
No, I agree. I mean, it would definitely be helpful in something that we could, put into place. I'm more than willing to take a look at it if they're allowed.
Excellent, thank you. Anne, do you have any questions or comments?
Just I'm with Kathy. If we could do automatic enforcement, it would be safer for the police, it would be
Mhm.
more effective. And I think the right place to go is our state representatives.
Okay, very good. Brian,
No,
John?
Yeah, just in terms of complaints or comments from citizens, has that rate really changed at all in the past, say, 6 months to a year?
Yeah, I mean, I've only had 1 or 2 in the last couple of weeks, and that was from Harbor Street and one from Beach Street. So as soon as we're done with the Harbor Street, we're gonna do Beach Street.
Good.
That's something I forgot to mention to Chuck earlier today. Beach Street from like the railroad tracks up towards the beach.
So is that to say that your typical call rate is 1 a week or so? Is that what it is? You said 1 or 2 the past week, couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the whole summer.
Okay.
So actually, John, your comment made me think of something. If it is not currently legal for us to issue tickets, I bet we could still maybe get a more accurate representation of how much speeding is actually happening. It doesn't involve privacy, it just involves the tech. And you don't have to, look for a specific plate number, it's just this car moved from distance point A to point B. Do the math and you can tell whether or not they were speeding, and we could get some real data as to how big the problem is.
We
do
have
that.
2,
You have
we
that?
have
We
2 of
do.
We
those.
already have that equipment,
Have it?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanna get some real data, Pine Street where I live we don't call,
Yeah.
we don't bother calling Todd every time, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of activity, I'll say,
That-
still.
That, most of the stuff that we've done over the past few years is on our website under traffic studies, so
Yeah.
it's available to the public.
Okay,
We've
great,
had Mill
awesome.
Street, we've had
Excellent.
a
Yeah,
couple,
so-
but
Just for purposes here, Todd, have things changed with regard to median speed? For what do you have? You have one on Pine Street. Where's the other one? School or?
Well, the trailer is on, there was one on Pine Street, the other one's on Lincoln right now, I believe.
Okay. And I don't know, has there been, well, depends upon where you are as to what the median speed is, I suppose, so.
Yeah.
right,
But that's
And
it's a good
and
point,
the
though.
other thing too is when we did the speed study or the traffic committee or the speed limit working group a couple years ago, I don't know if I sent you all the memo that was sent back in that was approved by that board at that time. We still need to update some of those signs around town. It's something I'll send over to Chuck just to make sure we're both on the same page. So for instance, Pine Street from Woodhome inbound and outbound to the center of town is 20 miles an hour. From Woodhome out is 25 until you hit 128. So those speed signs need to be changed.
yeah.
Okay.
When was the last time we did a study on Pine Street?
It was probably last year. I'd have to look at the website, but it's probably last year.
Thank you. Ann, do you have any questions or comments?
Maybe we have 2, I think the trailers do not record. Is that true?
No, the trailers do record.
So you can get information from the trailers about what people are going, what speed?
Yes, it's the
Oh, not
same.
what people, but
Yeah.
okay, so where is that information on the web? Because that should you should have continuous information there.
Yeah, so what we've been doing is using the pole mounted unit for when we have an actual, like a speed study request, because it's easier to download the information because the officer or Lieutenant McCoy can just go up next to it in his car and it's a Bluetooth connection, rather than go and download it. So, but we can still download the information. It just takes a little bit of time.
Download the information from the trailers.
Yeah.
How frequently do you do that?
When we get requests for the speed studies, it's, whenever we get the request. So like in 2021, I'm looking at it now, we had probably a half a dozen or actually more than that, probably like a dozen or so requests. In 2022, we've had 2, and we've had 1 so far on Upper Pine Street, and then we'll have the other one for Harbor and Beach coming up.
May I ask how much information those trailers hold? Like, is it, a week's worth of information, then it overwrites, or is it, how much information is actually held in that before you download?
I think it goes by days, and I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to get back to you on the trailers. I'm more familiar with the pole-mounted unit than I am the trailers.
Because what I think we're all kind of poking at is, can there be some sort of operational cadence around downloading the information on a regular basis so that we can assess the trending? Because if we just use the phone calls to town hall, that may not be the most accurate way to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to Sergeant Newton. He's the one that handles the trailers, and he's actually pretty good with it. So I can get back to you on exactly how much data it holds, and see what I can come up with.
All right. Well, to Kathy's point, I think it would be good to do this on a regular basis, so we don't necessarily have to ask. You should say on a quarterly basis, this is what's going on, or monthly or something like that, if you have the data. And these pole-mounted units, I'm just very familiar with the one on Pine Street. That'll hold a lot. Is that what you're telling me? More than the trailers?
Well, the pole-mounted unit's not the same as the speed unit on Pine Street. It's just a box that you wouldn't even know that you're passing. It's like a gray box mounted to a telephone pole.
But it tells you your speed.
Doesn't flash the speed when you go by it. No, it just records it.
These are the tubes across the street.
Oh, the tubes across the street. No, I'm talking about the speed that is posted when you drive by on Pine Street. It tells you what your speed is.
I don't believe that holds the information, but I don't have any access to those.
Okay, it just tells you what your speed is.
Yeah, it just tells you what your speed is.
Okay.
Yeah, those aren't recorded.
They're not recording?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay.
But I think the point being.
I think we have the ability to, it's just we haven't done it. I think it just requires like a thumb drive because they're a little bit older than the previous versions. So we haven't done it like Todd was saying, the kind of newer version that they have. You just pull right up and it Bluetooth onto your laptop. We're not set up like that, so we haven't. Frankly, there hasn't been any kind of request for that data, and so we haven't been. We don't have the kind of capability to keep up with, like you said, literally at this point years worth of data.
What type of cost would we incur to be doing that on a routine basis, gathering that data and having it so we can assess more easily?
I don't think it would be much cost more than like Mark's daily routine would be to gather data and put it up.
I think that would be useful.
Yeah.
The one on Pine Street, et cetera, if you can get an option to attach something to that and get information out of it quarterly or monthly or something. Because these questions come up from time to time, and if you've got information that say, yeah, you're right, or you just think that's things are getting faster or slower, we'd have some answers.
Right.
Instead, we always have to kind of go back and say, well, we'll take a look.
Yep. I guess one other thing would have to, I don't know how Todd's work with the trailer mounted ones, but also for the speed feedback signs, I'm not exactly sure when they record the speed. So you're getting an instantaneous reading versus, people may be decelerating or in some cases accelerating beyond the signs. And so what does it actually record? I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. And that's why when we do speed studies, it's with the kind of incognito version to see what people are actually driving, not, their feedback speed where they may or may not decide to brake,
Right, and I think that's an important concept to understand the context of the data that's being collected. I think what we're all getting at though is data is good, and if we don't need to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And if we're looking at this from a trending standpoint, just gathering, regular data, when you're assessing trends, it's okay if the data is imperfect. I think that's really what we're getting at. So whatever you guys can get easily, I I think would be the first order of business. To Becky's point, we don't want to introduce a lot of cost or, time. It's what can we get easily so we can look at some trends.
But reliably.
Yeah.
Anne?
Yeah, the placement of some of the "your speed is" signs will tend to give you funny results. Specifically, I'm thinking of the one on Bridge Street, which is exactly at the point where the speed limit changes from 30 to 20. So if it's measuring as you're approaching it and you're doing 28, you're still within the legal limit. And you can brake and be at 20 at the change. So maybe we need to think a little bit about where we put our signs and our measuring devices. If they're at a change of speed limit, they're going to get peculiar results.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not an exact science because we do actually spend a lot of time thinking about where we place this, especially the speed feedback signs. And unfortunately, it takes into a lot of account, like first of all the sun because they're solar. Then it takes into account, are we putting it in somebody's front window? So we try not to do that. And then you need to get it somewhere where the sight line is good enough where people see it before they get to it. So there is actually more than most people would think going into where we put them. Also, we try not to add more signs where there already are signs. So yeah, there's a lot that we think about, but we can take another look at that.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could get some at some point an idea of, can we do this? Can we find a way to routinely monitor, at least for a little while? And that'd be great. Are there any comments from the public? Questions? Okay, I see Lieutenant McCoy's on. Did you want to say something, Lieutenant McCoy? You can unmute if you'd like. There you go.
Yeah, I do agree with Chuck with the permanent speed data things that we have that show you how fast you're going. That's not giving an accurate. It's not getting accurate data. That's more gearing towards to tell the driver how fast they're going and to slow down in the area. The black box that we use and we put it on poles, you drive by it, you have no idea you're even in a speed study. That gives the most accurate information. So that's basically.
And I believe that picks up your actual speed. So as soon as it sees you, it picks up what your speed is when you're going by it.
Yeah, it gives you accurate speed. It tells us if it's a motorcycle, tractor trailer, car. So.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Chuck, did you want to add anything else to that?
No, I guess I'd be happy to take any questions, but I guess the traffic calming policy that we have in place, we've been kind of adhering to it. I think, as Todd said, we have this study going on Harbor Street right now. So we'll evaluate that data when we get it. And then there were some other responses. I think actually last time I was on with you guys talking about this particular topic was more geared towards Pleasant Street, maybe some of the neighborhood around Norwood and Vine. We received a grant to actually install permanent signage, so the same speed feedback signs as well as some pedestrian activated crossing signs, but that money is just not available until November. So Todd and I have on our schedule that once that stuff goes in, then we can reevaluate and do more testing, because the testing that I think we gathered before was kind of inconclusive when it came to are people actually speeding or not, in terms of the policy. Obviously, some people speed, some people don't, but how much of a problem is it is the question we're trying to answer.
Yeah, exactly. Any other comments from the board?
Just a clarification. So I guess for Greg, is this a formal action that we can, get some information, and then, can you talk to the team offline and kind of get back to us on a when?
Yeah, so let me circle back with Chuck and Todd, and, probably, and certainly give you an update at your next meeting.
Okay, that'd be great.
And I would say thank you very much. I know you all have, police department and DPW have been putting out signs, slowing traffic down, yield signs, always a lot going on, and it seems that the complaints come more quickly than the congratulations or praise, so, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
A lot of hard work.
I will say this, in the interest of full disclosure, I don't think anywhere is near as many smiley faces as I should.
From whom?
From the sign.
From the sign.
There was a long time I didn't even realize there was a
This
smiley
is being
face.
recorded, Brian.
Brian. I get lots of smiley faces, at least from signs. So, all right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
All right, have a good night.
You too. Okay, next up, liaison updates. And if it's okay, just before we go to that, I wanted to go over the liaisons a little bit. And I had been down for school committee, but it seems to make sense that Ann Harrison do that one, if you're amenable, Ann. Since she's been on school committee, she has a very good and deep understanding of the workings and intricacies. Ann,
I would be delighted.
you sound it. Thank you. No, that would be wonderful. I think it would really be helpful. So to reiterate what we have Kathy Bellata as ZBA and Planning Board, Brian, Parks and Recs and Library. And in addition to Concom COA, you now have school committee. Did you want me to take one of those, Ann? Either Concom or COA? Or are you comfortable with a trifecta? You're muted.
Yes, I will follow Concom as well until it gets overwhelming. Thank you.
And what about COA?
COA is not going to get to be a heavy burden, I'm quite sure.
Okay, thank you. And the water resource is John, as is the DPW, with Kathy Blott as backup for DPW. Affordable Housing Trust, we have our trusty and wonderful Muffin Driscoll. That leaves me with the Board of Health, Slack. So updates today. Do we have any liaison updates? Since you're over there, Brian?
Sorry, just a quick clarification
Yes.
before we go to the individual updates.
Oh, you're also doing the dispatch.
Would you like us as liaisons to be reaching out individually to these boards to announce that we are the liaisons, or did you have some plan to communicate with the chairs directly?
That's a really good question. I think probably for you just to reach out yourselves, let them know that you are the liaison, and if you're not able to attend a meeting, if you can just have a synopsis to bring back, if need be. Any questions on that? Ann? It's good. All right, so do we have any updates on Parks and Rec or Library?
I haven't done anything with the library yet, but I did talk to Cheryl this morning. And she says Pine Street fields pass through the Concom for approval. They'll be going for a public hearing sometime in September. And then as far as the pickleball, I can't say pickleball with a straight face.
Difficult, I agree.
The craze continues, and Parks and Recreation Committee are gonna hold off on any, there's some noise complaints, but they're gonna hold off on any, restrictions at this point, and they're gonna revisit that next month.
Okay.
And I'll try to figure out what's the best, case scenario.
Is it, back to last time, is it more than one person now, or
That's
is
my
it?
knowledge, it's only one person, but I
Okay.
don't know. Greg might be able to speak to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Okay.
what we have.
All right, well, maybe, you know, we can see what Parks and Rec, Cheryl, come up with in terms of possibly, you know, having hours of use.
Well,
That are
they
beyond.
don't want to, yeah, they're not leaning towards restricting, the use at this point.
Right. Okay.
The problem is, not a problem, but there is no noise ordinance in town, so there's that.
It's either the problem or the good thing, depending on what boat you're sitting on or what Legion Hall. I hear that was a great time, by the
I
way.
could hear it on my balcony, it sounded like a lot of fun.
Yeah, had a great turnout, right?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I have a question on the Pine Street fields.
Yes.
There were some public questions and concerns raised at the last public meeting on Pine Street, on those fields, and some of the residents that spoke to me were looking for feedback on what they had already communicated. It's kind of like a feedback, you know, how was their feedback adjudicated? So,
I'll check with Cheryl on that.
could you, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
There were
somebody
issues-
asked.
There were issues with parking.
Well, it was,
And
yeah,
access because of the sidewalks.
there were concerns about safety on the
Yeah.
sidewalks, and so this gets to our conversation last time about communication. So residents have expressed a concern,
Mhm.
and they haven't heard back on what was done with their concerns.
And as we all know, it's very difficult. As much as you try to respond to every email, it's not always easy.
Right.
It's not an excuse, that's just.
Well, this was at the last public forum, so
Yeah.
I'm sure
That
Cheryl
was
had.
like 2 months ago, wasn't it?
It was, I was not, I think
I was
it was
in-
May,
I was
because
in
I
the-
wasn't
I was at the
here.
airport and I was
Yes.
sitting on.
I was out of the country, so, because I was following that as well. Thank
Okay.
you.
No, that's so, back to your point in terms of follow through and ensuring follow through.
So.
Recommendations.
Yeah, so I mean, one technique could be to have a simple spreadsheet of the feedback collected at the public meetings. And, you know, a column on what was adjudicated, you know, how was that feedback adjudicated? Yes, we heard, but we're not gonna take action, you know, just some feedback to the townspeople, and that could be posted on the website,
Mhm.
just, you know. But I just think people are voicing verbal concerns, so it's not documented in email, and
Right.
without that documentation, they're concerned things are gonna fall through the cracks.
Greg, what do you think about that type of, an idea of having a template after public forums that gets posted on the website?
So I think if we could create a sort of standard template that every, public forum uses for here, here are the issues raised, here are the proposed measures to address, something like that.
That's a great idea. That's a really good idea, and I think that's one of the things we're hearing from a number of people is have my concerns been addressed? And so, where do we go for this? What would be the next step? Greg, do you know is there meeting templates that we could use, or is probably something?
We have a staff meeting tomorrow, when we bring it up with department heads and talk about how we might come up with a process that would work for folks and get back to you on that.
Okay.
If you have any issues, I'd be happy to help, just give me a copy note.
Template queen.
Yeah, template queen.
Maven. Okay, so shall we put that on next meeting's agenda? September 8th, or do you want to go for the following?
very simple template, so it's really about
Okay,
would it be well adopted and it's really
Okay.
just-
so that is next meeting. Let's see what else we have. We have a couple of things that, this is the next meeting. Okay. Next on liaisons is ZBA Planning Board.
So, just, I don't know if you want Brian to fill you guys in on the ZBA, but, they are, in their deliberation on the 40B. Excuse me. And I believe at your last meeting, it was determined that, they haven't made a decision on whether or not they're approving with conditions or denying, but the next step is gonna be for the council, Mr. Pucci, to draft a denial, so they, that the ZBA can look at
We
it.
received that.
You did
Draft
receive that
denials,
Friday?
Yeah,
Okay,
we reviewed it, and tomorrow we'll be voting on that. I thought it was very well crafted. I think that partly, the issue here was that because we can't take any.
Public, yeah.
No, any of the public or comments prior to this denial can't be revisited. You had to roll everything into all the comments into the denial itself. And I think we did an excellent job. And we'll be voting on that tomorrow, I guess. So at least we'll be reviewing it, and my expectation is probably be voting on it tomorrow as well.
thank you.
And then just Greg, for that, then, if in your opinion, we vote on it tomorrow, then the 20-day clock starts after that? Or should we take the full 40 days?
So
You don't
in
have
your
to,
last,
you have to file it. Once it's filed with the
Right.
town clerk,
Right.
then that final
So,
20-day
so
clock
I don't know if
starts.
we're gonna file it, once we vote on it, I don't know if we're gonna file it at that time or just sit on it a little longer, I don't know.
Right. Depends if you feel a need for any further edits and follow-up.
so then on the planning board, they also met a couple of times since I think I've given an update. And so they've been, I think they're pretty much all caught up on their minutes, so they had a concerted effort to get all of their meeting minutes documented and posted on the website, and I believe they are pretty much all caught up. They also had provided a statement of findings to the ZBA on the SLV 40B. They wanted to make sure their position was well documented and given to the ZBA, so they had done that. Sue Brown gave an update on the parking study. She said the data collection was completed in July and that she's going to be gathering info from the downtown business community and would come forth with recommendations in the September-October timeframe. Then we had a discussion on the master plan next steps. There was some confusion about what we as a select board were looking for. And so I stated that we were really just looking for a status. So Ron had mentioned, because I had spoken with Sue Brown, and we had spoken at our retreat about the fact that the master plan had been done pre-pandemic, and we could just use a status on which items were completed, which items were in process, just where do things stand.
Which items were still applicable?
Yes, exactly. And so
Yeah.
there was some confusion. Some of the planning board members wanted to set up a subcommittee to kind of take a look at the master plan, but that was determined, I spoke of, and that's not what we were looking for. We're just looking for an update. So that was all clarified, and Sarah will be working with the town planner on that. And she said, I believe she said a few weeks. And then there were some questions on the Chapter 91 licensing process due to some of the Chapter 91 items that have been coming forth related to the harbor. And I think it was Mary Foley that mentioned they're wondering what their roles and responsibilities are as a planning board for Chapter 91 licenses, et cetera. There didn't seem to be clarity around that. So it sounds like another roles and responsibilities clarification maybe in order. Some were saying that we don't need to have anything to do with it, but other items had come before the planning board previously, like the Crocker's Boatyard expansion. So it seems like there's some clarification that could be helpful.
Greg, any?
Well, so bylaws require a special permit from the planning board for any items that also require Chapter 91 license. There are two separate processes. One's a state process, one's a local process. The state license is not valid until the local process has also been completed. But it is, we don't currently require an applicant to seek one before the other. We leave it up to the applicant to choose which one they submit first. I think that perhaps has caused some confusion.
I think so. So the sequencing, whether or not there's a sequencing, also someone mentioned that it was curbs and docks and piers do come before the planning board, but other things go before Concom. So there is one of those tools that I was gonna bring to the next retreat. I think I'm gonna send it to you earlier, that may be helpful, a RACI chart. Right, and so I will send that to you tomorrow. Just, it's a tool that can be used to outline deliverables, who's responsible for what, who the decision makers, and if that would be helpful for this as well. That would be it. And that is my liaison report.
Thank you. And we are waiting on information to put up on the website regarding the update on dispatch.
Yes, yeah, so we need that draft schedule, and you know, we did suggest that we could at least update it with the IMA that was signed. That could, I'm not sure who the work was on that.
That's out there,
That's
isn't
up
it?
there, should be.
On the actual dispatch website?
I thought it was, but
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'll
I
double
saw it
check.
somewhere,
I
but
saw it
think-
somewhere, but I'm not sure I saw it on the dispatch. So
Yeah,
I will double check that.
I don't think I saw it on there today, but.
double check.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathy. Anne, any updates on Concom or COA?
COA continues not to have meetings in July or August, which is nice. And I have missed the Concom. I will get back to that, sorry.
No, it's summer. Okay, John, any updates?
Yeah.
DPW or Water Resource Protection
Well,
Task Force?
With regard to resource, just a little bit, since our meeting on August 1st, the Water Resource Group in its entirety has not had a meeting. We will have a meeting on August 17th, so there hasn't been anything that's transpired with the total group. However, there are 6 subgroups, as you may recall, from the discussion with Steve Gang that we had on August 1st. And there are progress on studies that continue to move ahead with regard to what feeds our aquifer. In other words, how far is water coming from what other towns to feed our aquifer? And probably equally important, who uses that aquifer? What other towns use it? Certainly we do. Essex, in particular, there are private wells, and we do have a list of the private wells, and there are scores of them here in town. We do have to take a look and find out, okay, which ones are active and which ones are in fact in the aquifer, because a number of them probably are not. But we have to look at that and see what's going on with that. And we are gonna look at a potential study in terms of what feeds Gravelly Pond. We certainly do pump water in there from Round Pond, but that does get water from the aquifer, and we can do some studies. And we're gonna commission someone, I think. We've got a proposal to look to determine just how Gravelly Pond is fed, because of course that is half of the water supply that we've got here. And finally, at the meeting on the 17th, we're going to look at our water rates, which was previously discussed. We've got about a 20% spread from lowest to highest using rate, and it really doesn't make any difference to anybody in terms of pricing. We are going to try and do something about that, and we realize that there are issues with regard to some of the consumption. Some of that large consumption may just be large apartment buildings, and that really can't be compared with someone who's doing irrigation. But we've got some ways to think that we can get around that. So that'll be part of the discussion on the 17th. Finally, as you had mentioned, Becky, it is August. It's tough for all of these subgroups to get together, and furthermore, a couple of weeks ago, we found out that all of these subgroups in getting together are subject to open meeting law. So this is another, and they had not been operating on that basis, and some of these groups are only 2 people or 3 people. So we've got to that's just another consideration in terms of scheduling times when people can get together. So getting this information and moving it along and determining exactly what the deliverables will be from this large group may take a little longer. Certainly within the time frame that we've got here, but of 18 months. But August has been a bit of a challenge in that regard. So things continue to move along.
Okay. Next up, we have, thank you, John. Muffin Driscoll for our Affordable Housing Trust. Did you have anything to, for Pete's sake, sorry. My eraser keeps coming out. Muffin, did you have anything? I know you did send us an email with an update.
Yeah, and then an update to that update is that the RFP will be on the central register next week. We received an email from Sue Brown earlier this afternoon.
Excellent.
Yep, and there will be September 21st, I believe, from 11 to 12. Sue Brown and members of the Affordable Housing Trust, John Feuerbach and Chris Only, will be available for any developer to come into town hall and ask any questions they may have. So we're hoping someone appears that day.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much.
Welcome.
All right. Let's see. Regarding the Board of Health, I think you've all seen the email exchange where co-chair of Board of Health wants to bring a proposal to protect drinking water sources to the planning board. And that's it for me right now. So that's it on liaison updates. Now we can move on to public notices. And let's see, this is DEP notice of Chapter 91 license permit application. Greg, do you need to
Just to
speak
note
any
that
of these?
the town's project for rebuilding the Central Street culvert and dam, getting closer. One of our last remaining permits is the Chapter 91 license. So they're going through their process. They have about a notification, and that if anyone wants to submit comments or request a hearing, they can do so. And that would be hosted by DEP. We obviously would participate if they decide to hold a hearing. Similarly, there are Chapter 91 licenses from private sector. Both marinas in town have 91 license applications into the state, as does a private residence for a new float dock area. So those are out and about, available, and people are free to submit their comments to the state, and they'll take it from there.
Has there been any sort of update on, I don't see anything on the town website under the DPW regarding why we're doing this. I mean, I know there have been discussions about it, and we're trying to mitigate the flooding that happens upstream, but to do that, we can't start upstream. We have to start and work our way up.
Yes.
So I don't know if there's been recently any community outreach on that.
Not recently. We have the studies that have been done, but we could perhaps do an update in terms of where we are with our funding quest We're still waiting to hear
Yeah.
from FEMA and the BRIC grant, which is the large application. We just recently have submitted a couple additional very large applications in case the BRIC grant does not come through. But the various agencies are talking to one another, so they know that we are applying for these other funds in case the BRIC doesn't, so they'll be working together in their reviews. But we could put an update.
I think an update would be good, including, not just where we are, but why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, some of those
think
past studies certainly document the need. And those who were here in the
for the Mother's Day
06
flood.
Mother's Day
Yeah.
flood.
We went swimming down Norwood.
Yeah, I was reviewing some of the pictures because I was not in town at that time.
Oh, it was something else.
It was an education to see some of those pictures.
It sure was.
So yeah, this is not going to solve all of those issues, but it's the first major step.
Right.
As you say, we have to work downstream and work our way upstream.
Yeah, I think that would be good to explain to people, or at least let them have that understanding of why this is being done. So, yeah, if we could do that.
And just on that note, we also will be holding some public forums once we have a better sense of the construction timeline, and then letting people have some input on how best to manage traffic diversion and can we accommodate pedestrians, that sort of thing. We're certainly hoping that we can do that. We may use the new gangplank that's out at Tux off-season, bring it here as a pedestrian bridge. So that might be able to help us out.
Good. Right, thank you. And Xfinity again.
Yeah, just some updates from Comcast Xfinity in terms of some of the changes in channels, et cetera. And then the last notice that we have here is Manchester Marine is sponsoring they call it a Coast Sweep event. It's a cleanup day, basically, on the water, the beaches and the water itself. And they're offering to support that. You go to Manchester Marine, you can register, pick up bags, and you can bring the debris that you find on the water or along the shorelines. You can bring it to them, and they'll dispose of it. So that's coming up this coming weekend, the 20th and the 21st, and that's from 9 to 5 both days.
Okay, so that brings us to Administrator's Report.
All right, that. So first off, folks may know that the new final guidelines on the MBTA zoning law that was enacted last spring, they had draft guidelines that created quite a bit of concern and comments. The state received, I think they said they received over 400 formal comments to those guidelines. So they have responded. They have the final ones that they just released last week, and those are up on the website on the MBTA link that's on the town website. So the new guidelines have provided some additional flexibility. The total number of new units for us has come down. Under the proposed, we were at the 750 units. Under the draft, we're in the 559, in that right around 550, 560. And that 40% of those would need to be within a half mile of the station, and the other 60% could be in other parts of town. So some greater flexibility, but there'll still be lots of need for conversations and how best to manage the new requirements and whether or not the town wants to go forward. That's all to be decided in the future. They pushed back by a month the deadline for filing your plan of how you will proceed. So we have until the end of January to do that. And then we have until at the end of December 2024 to enact new zoning if we want to be in compliance with the new law. So conversations obviously need to take place with you and the community and the planning board in particular, and figure out a game plan for putting a path forward.
So just clarification on that deliverable, so you mentioned the plan is due January of 2023.
Yes.
So thinking back to that racy chart we just mentioned, who is the accountable party to approve that plan, final approval on that? Is that the planning board?
So it would be the selectmen to approve the plan, but it would be the planning board who would carry the bulk of the work.
Okay, so select board approve. This might be a good use of that document I'll send you tomorrow to
Yeah.
kind of get clarified right up front who the approvers are, who's gonna do the work.
And the state actually hasn't provided the form yet, so I'm
Okay.
assuming, I said it with that because that's how the initial form was required. It was a selectmen approval, so I'm assuming they'll do the same
Okay,
on this, but we haven't seen that in final form yet.
that's fine.
But-
When, do we know when that's expected, the final?
They didn't give a deadline for that, but I'm assuming in the next month or two.
Okay, 'cause I just, regardless, I think it would be good for us to draft something. And before we get into the nitty gritty of how we want to approach the plan,
Right,
let's
who
get
the plan
clear
is, who's
right up
responsible.
front,
Yep.
who's the decision makers, who's doing, and then we can talk details.
Yes.
Because that is not that many months away.
Right.
No.
That's probably a year before we know. Okay.
Question, did that response address anything about existing units? Because you said new units.
Mm-hmm.
And that was always a
Total.
question in my mind,
Right.
because different towns have done different things in terms of what the units are that
Right.
meet their density
So that's a
requirement.
detail I haven't delved into.
That's a very
yet.
important detail too.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
It is. But how do they count existing?
that's correct. Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll get more information on that.
Okay,
Moving on, you accepted sort of the administrative role of the Boston Post cane, awarded to the eldest citizen in town. So it might make sense for one or two of you to help sort of put together the nitty-gritty details of that, working with Nancy Hammond and Council on Aging would be a logical place for support there. And so,
Maybe that's Ann and I would do that. I mean, just put it together, not that we're the ones who present, but work with Nancy.
yeah, I think that would be great.
Unless
Fine
somebody
with
else
me.
would like to do it. And
I'm okay.
John, you look
yeah,
like you
I mean,
might-
I could, certainly Ann is the appropriate person with the COA.
If you'd
no
like to,
question.
that's great. I mean, you have
But I
a
can-
lot going on. That's why I'm just,
No, I can help with Ann on that because the Boston Post cane, there is an interface there with regard to the Manchester Museum.
oh, okay, good,
Okay,
yes,
because
yes.
they hold the cane and I'm on the board there, so that's
All right.
probably natural. Ann and I.
Okay, John and Ann on that one. Okay, good.
And then just a quick update on, so a number of the policies that you've been reviewing, we've said, well, that really is better placed in the personnel, or it already is. And one in particular, the exit interview was something that you had talked about last spring. So that is in place, we have a template in place. And then our HR coordinator, Michelle Maloney, will be making sure that happens.
And who would actually be doing the exit interviews?
So she would be in conjunction with the department head typically.
Perfect. Okay, excellent, thank you, I can scratch that off the list. Okay, and we'll see that.
And then, so we do, we will need your final sign off on the updated personnel policies, we'll have that ready in the fall here.
Excellent.
Moving on, Harbor Master Plan, you received a letter from an engineer who was representing a number of property owners along the harbor in particular. and asking for a meeting to talk about the harbor in general and a potential master plan for the harbor. And they have responded back and saying that a September 19th date, so coming on your meeting on the 19th, your second meeting in September, would be a good time for them. And so we'll tee that up for that time.
Question on that. So this was also discussed at the planning board meeting when they were discussing what is our role
Right.
regarding the harbor. So if this group is gonna come in to the select board meeting, September 19th, I think we wanna get our roles and responsibilities clarified. Does the planning board, what is their specific role regarding the harbor? Because they are responsible for the town's master plan, right? Who's responsible if we do a harbor master plan? Is that planning board or select board? Wouldn't hurt to get all that clarified.
Or maybe the Harbor Advisory Committee.
Or the harbor advisory committee, yeah, exactly.
The other question with that is, or concern, is that there seem to be, like most things, laws, different ways to interpret. And I've been hearing different interpretations of the Chapter 91. So should we have an expert who is representing the town, a waterways bylaws expert here for clarification?
Oh, we certainly can.
I just think that would be a good idea rather than just having one side stating what it believes and another states, so.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, there's actually been some significant advancement of some climate resiliency work in the region. And as you may remember, at least those who've been on a little longer, that this past year, through private and state funding, the Cape Ann Climate Coalition and Town Green have been able to conduct a number of studies. One was a simulation of a Category 3 hurricane, and it's I can tell you it's a very sobering analysis, to say the least.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing what is predicted would happen, and the amount of destruction that we would witness. Quite sobering. In addition to that, they did a study of what are some shorter term steps that could be taken to lessen the impact of such a storm. Whether you're shoring up some seawalls or whether you're improving the health of some wetlands or salt marshes to try to absorb some of these impacts. So that was study number 2. Study number 3, there's in the midst of wrapping up, look at net zero housing, best practices and ways that the 4 municipalities on Cape Ann could encourage, if not require, net zero housing for new construction, something that the state is also working on in a new super energy code. And we had the stretch energy code, they're looking at one that would go a step beyond that. And then the 4th study that is being wrapped up is a look at waste to energy options. So at not only solid waste, but also in terms of trash, household trash, but also the sludge that's generated from a sewer plant. Are there ways to capture energy from those sources and turn it into a cash positive rather than a very large cash negative, which it currently is for us. It's timely because Gloucester is in the early stages of looking at a new treatment plant for the city. And indeed, there's some interest in talking about a regional facility. And are there opportunities for the 4 communities to team up for the handling of waste.
Mhm.
So that's all good news and good progress. Those studies will be up on the website and will be available to the public. And we'll get those details out to folks. For year 2, the second year that's about to begin, thanks to Representative Ferrante and Senator Duttar, the group was able to secure $200,000 of state funding. And this is with a focus on natural systems. So what are the health of our forests, our wetlands, our salt marshes, and how could their health be enhanced with an eye towards the benefits that their enhanced health would provide for mitigating some of the impacts that we can expect with bigger storms and higher seas.
Mhm.
And in particular, in addition to that overall study, we're waiting to hear from a grant application that was submitted to CZM to take a hard look at our downtown village area here, and are there opportunities, again, for mitigation through some natural systems enhancements, and if not, what sort of hardening would be most appropriate.
And just for people listening, that's the coastal zone management, the CZM.
CZM, I'm sorry, yes, yeah, that's a state agency, coastal zone management. So we hope to hear in the next little while about that application. And so we'll be letting you know. There's some potential very good news for year 3 for the coalition. To receive a large amount of federal funding, at least for us would be a large amount, it'd be $500,000. It's made it through the Senate appropriation process. It's got a ways to go. Probably won't know until next January or February, depending on when a final federal budget is approved. After they usually do continuing resolutions, even though the federal fiscal year starts October 1, they usually don't meet that date. But at least we've made it into the Senate appropriation proposal. So that's thanks to Senator Warren and Senator Markey. So they've been helpful with that. All of this will merit probably a special meeting sometime in the fall when we can present some of the findings and outline some of the next steps in more detail. But when you take
Frightening.
Give a heads up.
Some frightening visuals.
Some frightening visuals, yes, I'm afraid there are.
Yeah.
But hopefully that's a motivator as well.
Mhm.
So.
Just question, have you guys ever done a tabletop exercise?
A what?
So that's one of the follow-ups.
Okay.
Yes, for emergency preparedness.
Yes.
Yes. So we've both Fire and Chief Police and I, we sat down with a MEMA rep and talked about just doing that. And so there's some baseline data that they'd like to gather, and then yes, we're thinking of sometime in the fall that we would do something like that.
It's like, it's like you're acting in a play. Someone, an
Yes.
emergency preparedness
Oh, okay.
professional will come up with a scary scenario, and as a leadership team or a board, you will be given bits of information one at a time, and you make decisions. And your decisions lead to other bits of information coming forward, and you basically practice
Yeah.
making decisions in an event of an emergency.
Is running away an option?
Yeah.
It'll be documented and publicly publicly documented running aways.
Is that movie The Russians Are Coming? That was an old.
Yeah, well, actually, part of it is evacuation.
Yeah.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
what instructions do we have and recommendations to people for evacuation?
Central Street culvert.
Yes. So that's something that we talk a lot about here, but it's something that probably deserves more attention. So, and then just finally schedules, show you some of the time I'll be away in the next couple of weeks, both for pleasure and for some board meetings that I have. And then also wanted to talk a little bit about your schedule, and whether or not, so we are scheduled currently for the 25th for the second half of your workshop session for priorities
And we need to change that.
and strategies, strategic planning. So I know that Ann is, she won't probably be able to be in person on the 25th, so don't know if we wanted to try another date or,
Yeah, I think we should. I mean,
I think
at
it needs to
first
be
I
in
was
person.
thinking that but it functions much better when we're all together, I think.
Right.
So, with that said, is Greg, let's see, where did you say those, your dates, and the 29th and 30th?
so I don't know if
What
something
about
the first or
September
second.
1st?
Yeah, first or second. I don't know
Are
if
you
Ann's,
around,
I don't
Wait a
know,
minute, I
Both
thought,
days.
I thought you said
I don't know if
Ann
Ann's
is-
back yet, though.
He
Oh.
was not back until 9/8, September 8th.
I will absolutely be back by the 8th.
And I will not be,
You're gone that second week.
I get
right?
back the 11th.
Okay.
So I could do that week.
15th.
What does the 15th look like for everybody?
First day.
So
of
that's-
spring.
You had mentioned that for a tree hearing.
Tree, we're doing the tree hearing on the 15th in the evening.
Oh, that's right. Well, if we're doing that in the evening, do we want, that's actually, okay, yeah. Would you like to do a retreat in the afternoon and then come back for tree hearing, or would you all prefer to do that a separate day? Look at Debbie.
My understanding that the trees are gonna be very, very, I'd like to just do one at a time.
Hey,
Is the tree thing definitely September 15th? For some reason I had it.
I have a
on the
question mark after that.
I
For
think
some
we're
reason I
definitely,
had it.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it
I think we're
came,
confirmed with the,
All right,
with the
take
tree
out that
board.
question mark.
Yeah,
I think that.
And that's at 4 o'clock on the 15th?
I have 6:30.
6:30, okay, I just wanna make sure I get the wrong stuff.
That's
That's
But
what I was
we-
waiting for, I
we
didn't know. what
normally
time.
do it in
We
the
can-
evening, so.
Yeah, normally in the evenings.
I'd like to do it in the evenings.
Yep, 6:30, okay.
All right, so
So that's Thursday, September 15th.
at 6:30.
First day of Hispanic
So
Heritage.
Brian, with your, can you ever do a weekday? Or is that difficult for you?
If it was imperative, yeah, I could do it. I prefer not to, but if I have to, I will.
Well, people,
Even late afternoon,
Late afternoon, I mean, anything
like
3 or
4 on?
4 o'clock I could do.
so we would do a 4 to 7?
Which day, I'm sorry, which day were we?
I don't know that we
You're
got
just
that.
generalizing
Oh,
it.
general.
What about, do we do that same week? Or do you want to, if we go to the following week, we've got our meeting anyway on the 19th, and it's already looking to be quite a good agenda. The other possibility is we go back to the weekend. Unless you'd rather not use your weekend. You know, rather than discuss this now, let's send out some options. This is, yeah. Okay, so we will move the 25th. And we can just send around as long as we're not talking about anything else, we can do that. So that brings us to the point in the meeting where we say we're going to go into executive session, not to return to open meeting. And we are entering into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, as well as executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 2, to conduct strategy with respect to contract negotiations with clerical union if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. May I have a motion? And
So-
again,
so
not to
moved.
return.
Not to return.
Okay, moved by John Round, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by John Round, second, Debbie gets put down by whom?
Ladies' choice.
Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Ann?
Yes?
Okay, Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
John Round?
Yes.
And Becky Jakes says yes. Okay.